Welcome to the Loved Called Gifted podcast. This is your place to come for musings about spirituality, identity and purpose. I'm your host, Catherine Cowell. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Andrea Clarke. Do you want to say hi, Andrea, and tell us who you are and where you are in the world?
Well, I'm Andrea Clarke and I am in West Sussex, right next to the South Downs Way. So from the top of the hill behind the house, I can see both the south coast, the seaside, and I'm also looking towards the hills as well and the beautiful South Downs Way.
That sounds really beautiful. So we met on a boat.
We did. A catamaran. Neither of us had been on a sailing holiday before, had we? Ever?
No, we hadn't. So we were rather fortunately treated to one.
I know. So amazing. I just keep remembering that beautiful blue sky and that warm sea and the sunshine was just tremendous.
Yes.
But the thing that was brilliant was the fact that we didn't actually know beforehand who was going to be on the catamaran, did we? We had no idea. I rocked up to Gatwick with a bit of trepidation, thinking this is like some kind of strange Agatha Christie in which you've got a group of people that you don't know turning up for something that you don't really know whether you're going to get on with it or not. Because I was really also thinking, I have no idea whether I'm going to get on with these people, whether I'm going to enjoy sailing, whether I'm going to be seasick the entire time. You know, far away, am I going to be bitten to death by mosquitoes? You know, am I going to be, there was all this sort of dread thoughts. And it was that strange thing of being at the departure gate at the airport thinking, what am I doing? But I'm just giving myself to this process. I'm in the hope that this is something that God is in. And sure enough, that really was the case.
Yes. So I thought it'd be really good to have a conversation because you announced fairly early on that Jesus had invited you to be part of his crack surrender squad. And that kind of evolved over the week rather preciously. So do you want to take us back to that moment when Jesus did invite you to be part of his crack surrender squad?
Well, I'm going to have to sort of qualify that a bit with like telling you a little bit about who I am. I am married. I have two grown-up children, one of whom is already married, one is very beautifully engaged and due to be married. So we're in that stage of life. I've been married to Andy now for 37 years. I am a managing director of a company where we provide residential care and supported living to adults that have learning disabilities. So my background and my kind of working life has been in nursing and then in social work, working with adults that have very challenging behaviour, learning disabilities as their primary diagnosis, but also mental health issues, complexes around behaviours that challenge and that sort of thing. So that's been my working life. I also, 25 years ago now, I helped found a charity providing face-to-face counselling, telephone counselling, email, internet and play therapy for children and adults, anyone that's experienced an unwanted sexual experience, so sexual trauma, that sort of thing. So that's called Life Centre. So I helped to found that and I am now chair of trustees of that 25 years later, helping people to reclaim and be restored and to find hope in the situation, regardless of what has happened to them in their trauma. That's been a big part of my life. And then sort of the other part of my life is that I became a Christian or had a big revelation of who Jesus is back when I was probably around about 19. And I've been walking that journey of faith since that time. And I am now one of the core leaders, if you like, an elder of the church that I'm part of, Revelation Church in Chichester, West Sussex. And for those people that might know, we were the church where we had the very first 24/7 prayer room, and 24/7 prayer has now become a kind of global phenomena. So that's the backstory of who I am. I've been incredibly busy all of my life. I'm a busy person. I like having a lot of plates to spin. I'm the sort of person that the busier that I am, the more I seem to sort of end up picking up more and more things. until the point that I'm juggling so much I can't remember what day it is, who I am, what I am, what hat I'm wearing, what I'm supposed to be doing. And in the midst of all this, we've had a good couple of years of looking after my husband's parents, who both very sadly died within 6 months of each other last year. They very much didn't want to go into care. They very much wanted to be at home. They wanted as little input from anybody outside. They're quite private people. And my husband's an only child. And so that was quite a thing of juggling all the other things I'm juggling, but also juggling that really profound thing of caring for very elderly people in their final years of life. And doing that in a way that is respecting what they want and their wishes, but also holding on to your own frustrations and and the fact that they were phoning day and night. And we did eventually manage at the final moments to have some carers in, but certainly not wraparound care by any means. So by the time we'd got to the end of it, we were exhausted, knowing that we'd done the right thing, but exhausted. And it was in the backdrop of that I was then offered the opportunity of the fabulous sailing opportunity. And I was just so bowled over by the generosity and how lovely the idea of just getting away. I'll go anywhere, just take me away. And it really was one of those kind of like, it doesn't matter what it is, just take me away, sail me away. And so literally the night before going, and I was really like, Lord, I haven't really prepared for this. I don't really feel prepared, other than obviously I packed my little bag, but I really am unprepared. And in the midst of that, we had a worship evening that we have once a month. That's a beautiful, contemplative, reflective space. And it's a sort of come as you are space. And people genuinely do. You wander in with your mug of tea and you sit down and you just allow the music to wash over you and to allow the presence of the Holy Spirit to soothe you, rock you, cleanse you, enable you to be encouraged and wrapped in love. And that's the kind of space that we try to encourage. And in the midst of that, I felt so strongly the Holy Spirit inviting me, or Jesus inviting me, I want you, Andrea, to be part of a crack surrender squad. And that's so like, wait, crack surrender squad. And I'm quite a cheeky sort of person. I love a laugh. And the idea of the sort of juxtaposition of that usually you're a crack squad that's going in and doing, you've trained hard to do all these very important, special things. But this is something entirely different. This is a crack surrender squad. And I opened myself to that to say, Lord, whatever that means, I am willing to let go of all of the titles and all of the stuff and all of the responsibilities and all of the trappings and all of the other stuff, all the expectation of other people, and also, to be honest, the expectation of myself to be responsible and good and, do my job well and all of those things. I'm going to choose to let all of that go and surrender to the one who loves me. And so I arrived at Gatwick, as I say, to meet people that I didn't know, to suddenly go, this is part of this. This is part of just surrendering. I'm going to surrender control. I'm not even going to have my feet on firm ground. I'm going to be slightly rocked at all times. And I'm going to go into this wholeheartedly because I believe that this is where I can find the peace and the healing and the restoration that I need for this time.
So when you first described kind of at the beginning of the trip being invited into the crack surrender squad, it still sounded fairly activist. So I remember you saying that you felt that this was about surrendering to all of the things that God had called you to. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the word surrender within a sort of Christian cultural context often has quite a duteous feel about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was first considering it, and we'd met sort of within 24 hours of me kind of hearing that, I was still feeling quite, what does this really mean? How can I do this? What does that actually require of me? That sort of activist kind of thing. I am going to be a part of a crack surrender squad. And I think in a way it is surrendering to all that I'm called to, not giving all of that up, but basically saying, I don't have control of that. Because I think, we can hold on to those labels that we've maybe given, or those prophetic words that we've been given, or those senses of where we are called and what we should be doing. Certainly, if you're an activist type of person, you start to kind of go, oh, well, that means this, and I need to do this training, and I need to do that, and I ought to be on this course, and I ought to do that. And we start to add, and load onto that calling a whole load of other external stuff. But actually, I think for me, it was like an awareness of I need to strip all of that back.
Yes. Yeah.
Go back to the initial call, the heart of what it really is all about, to be called by God and chosen and named and those sorts of things. The surrendering was being able to just go, I'm going to strip that back to the very heart of what it is, I'm going to go back to the beginning. And I started to ponder the idea of going back to factory settings.
Mm.
We're all very, very tech, aren't we? And things go wrong all the time. And we're told, aren't we? Have you tried turning it on and off again and all of that? And we don't do that with ourselves. I think we struggle to do that because we're so on. I need to be on, I need to be on. But why haven't we turned ourselves off and on again? Why haven't we gone back to factory settings, got rid of all of that junk, all of that add-ons, all of the other stuff? Go back to the way it's supposed to be, strip it right back to the way that God created us, called us to be at the very beginning. And so I think really for me, in that place of lots of stuff and lots of plate spinning and exhaustion and the physical exhaustion of not having had much sleep and all of those sorts of things, and the grief and all of the mixed emotions of different things, it was that, okay, I'm going to go right back to the heart, go right back to the beginning and consider what that call is.
Yeah. You found the thing that you wrote.
Yeah. So when I'd heard that about the correct surrender squad and whatever, this is what I wrote that night. Take me back to factory settings, back to the way that you made me to be. Take me back to factory settings, back to the time where I could be free to walk and talk with you face to face. A time before all the smart programs and add-on functions took all the space. I want a reset, a return to the safety of how it was in the very beginning, the Garden of Eden, before the viruses and Trojan horses polluted my operating system and clouded my mind. Take me back to factory settings, back to the way that you made me to be. I want an upgrade, to hear with clarity and see with certainty, to follow more closely, tracking each step. But first, take me back to factory settings and make me ready to be.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. What are the elements of what a Christian view of what surrender might be did you need to surrender in order to understand what it was really going to be like to be part of God's crack surrender squad?
Well, I think the key element being that he created me, that I have been fearfully and wonderfully made, that the perfection of God's love as a parent, as a mother and father to me, is that I don't need to fit into a family in a dynamic. And by which I mean, all of us, we're born into whatever we're born into. And then we sort of have to fit into that family, don't we? And we find our place and we jostle for position, depending on whether you're firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, one of 25, whatever. We find our way. We get labelled then quite early on. You're the good one, you're the responsible one, you're the cheeky one, you're the, all of those, and the slight disappointment, you're the black sheep of the family. There's various different labels that we all come under. And I think, for me, it's stripping all of those things back and saying, actually, what does it mean to be a loved daughter where there isn't that expectation, where there's not an expectation of me to achieve, there's not an expectation of me to smooth everything over and make things okay for my parents. There isn't an expectation for me to get qualifications or to not be naughty, to be quiet, to be more like this person or less like that person, or, those sorts of things that we begin to just load onto ourselves. I think if we begin to strip that back, you begin to think, I was born enough. I was born enough. The physical imperfections, the stuff that we can end up struggling with, that wasn't the way that I've been created. Now, I am well aware of my imperfections, but my God, the one who created me enough.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's going back to that, surrendering to what the world has put on me, what expectation I've also put on myself, and surrendering to all of that, going back to factory settings of the way I was made in the factory and the way I am perceived by my loving God is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. There is often a sense, isn't there, that surrender means giving up who we are in order to, as you say, fit into the family. And what you're saying is that this is absolutely the opposite of that.
Yeah, you can take surrender as being, right, I surrender, I'm going to run off and go and hide myself and never be seen again by anybody and never actually do or achieve anything. But that in itself would be a bit ridiculous because, and I would also be deeply unhappy because I am in my happy place when I am part of a team and doing stuff that, and choosing to be actively involved in things and making a difference and all of that. I love that. That's my bread and butter. That's my whole thing that makes me smile and joyful and all of that, being part of things. If I was told, you to surrender and that meant therefore go and be quiet in a corner, that'd be utter punishment. I mean, it'd be horrific. I couldn't think of anything worse. I mean, I can see for some people, if they were told, no, surrender and go and whatever, if you're a natural introvert and, you like nothing better than to be on your own, that might for some people be marvellous. But for me, that would just be sheer hell. But I think it's more the surrendering to being able to choose this, not feel like it's been forced on me. I choose the roles I have. I choose the interactions I have. I choose the expectation I have. I'm not victim to it. It is if you come from a place of feeling that you have surrendered all of that external expectation, and obviously there are always going to be external expectations. I didn't do my job, I won't get paid. But whatever. However, it is choosing that, isn't it? It's not being victim to it and not feeling like you're trapped in it in some sort of way. And I think that we put expectations on one another because of the expectations that we put on ourselves. That has also informed me as well of how I then perceive other people and the choices that they're making. And I think actually, in some ways, as I've begun to think like this, it's made me be able to be kinder and less judgmental.
That's really interesting. So effectively, you did have sort of a fortnight of being turned off and turned back on again, because it was absolutely away from all of those expectations.
Yeah.
And I wonder what you noticed was happening within you in that time and what of that you've kind of carried with you.
Well, I noticed, I think really very early on, that the whole thing of being rocked, and it's difficult to kind of explain it, but it felt like a very womb-like experience. So there was a sort of somatic thing that was going on as much as anything. I was being rocked like a baby. And I'm a 58-year-old woman. So every night as I was going to sleep, I was being rocked like a baby. And I think I took on that comfort. I took on that feeling of safety, even though, logically, I was not safe, a catamaran, as glamorous as it might sound, you and I now know, is essentially a portaloo on the water.
Yes.
It's a caravan, isn't it, really? It's a caravan.
Very, very nice caravan.
It's a caravan.
Not to knock the caravan, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's a glamorous caravan holiday on the water with a portaloo. The views are beautiful out of the rain is warmer. But I took on, just because of that, feeling safe and comforted and a babe in arms. So that really helped with the whole going back to factory settings thing, I guess. And I embraced that. And I also embraced the opportunity for creativity. I probably had forgotten how much I enjoy journaling and writing poetry and expressing myself in that way. And I had the opportunity, because I didn't have all of the other things, to do that. And so that has been a real joy to me, sort of rediscovering my joy of that. And I mean, going snorkeling, which I'd never done before, and seeing these beautiful gardens, I mean, glorious gardens of shape and colour and texture, and seeing these beautiful fish interacting with this world that's below the surface that I had not seen before. I think it was like a sort of childlike experience, that whole kind of thing of releasing yourself to be able to play and wonder. And I mean, I love nature. I love going out on walks in the countryside, and that's been a joy for me over several years. And I do regularly go on pilgrimages, and having that opportunity to walk and talk, but also to walk in utter silence and to go to beautiful places and just enjoy the glory of God's creation, and to see that and to allow that to soak me in, and allow God to speak to me through nature has been really important to me. But I think particularly this, because it was such a different experience, I allowed myself to be like a child in it, I guess, as well. And so that was, again, all of that thing of surrendering, of like unpacking, going back to factory settings and saying, this is what I want. I want to be authentically me, the Andrea that I was created to be.
Yeah, which is really beautiful. I wonder if it has changed your practice, the way that you've done life since. Have there been shifts?
I think it has made me go slower. Is productivity down? No. However, there's a shift in me of knowing that it's not all up to me. And I think that stress point that I know that I would get myself into, of feeling somehow I've got to do everything, I'm less concerned for that now. Also, I mean, in my daily practice, I love, getting up, taking my cup of tea to my armchair, and reading my Bible, spending some time with God. I love, every day I walk the dog, and while I'm doing so, I stick my earphones in and I listen to worship music, and I just let myself be. And I think that that's it. And just shutting down, I think, from the external stuff, and not being like a hamster on a treadmill, not needing to be part of things quite as much as I did, being able to just let other people take things on if they want to, and being maybe a little more strategic in what I do say yes to, not just constantly, oh yeah, I can do that. So just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. You wrote a really brilliant piece about some of the things that you're not called to do, and I wonder if you happen to have that around to share.
It is not my responsibility to be the universal fixer, creative solutions machine, chief cook and bottle washer, filler of gaps, comforter, protector, cash machine, sucker upper, diplomat, bridge builder, saver of souls. It is my responsibility to be Andrea, to be loved and to love, to draw close to God and keep pace with God's love. Ultimately, people, creatures, organisations that I choose to be involved with are primarily God's responsibility. If I choose to remain involved, it is so that I can be a participant and an element in the process. Only God is the capstone, the linchpin, the catalyst. Only God is the author and perfecter. This is a paradigm shift. I'm not naughty. unkind, unfeeling, lazy if I don't take on the burden of other people or organizations. I am not out of step or contrary to the call of God on my life if I release my grip and let go of the reins. I'm not giving up, but giving in to a greater love. I have no need of titles or qualifications or position or platform or fame or fortune. I am entirely content to be who I am, loved by the one who knew me in my mother's womb, who rocked me and held me, wooed me and whispered to me, I am Andrea, beloved daughter, and that is just enough.
That is really beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a subtle but absolutely profound shift, isn't it? From doing the things and holding the responsibility for all of it, that kind of sense of duty, and I must and I ought to and I should, to an activism which surrenders the responsibility and the weight. I don't have to be the cash machine for everybody else. There's that bit that Paul says, there's two things which are both kind of opposite but equally true, that we should all carry one another's burdens, but everybody will carry their own burden.
Yes. It is that thing of over responsibility, feeling over responsible. We know that the greatest love is to lay down your life. But that does not mean, because obviously we're not all called to martyrdom in that situation.
Thankfully, yes.
That does not mean that in my day-to-day, I have to be the martyr. I'm not surrendering in order to be like breastfeeding to everybody. And it's about time that instead of just, here it is, just, suck the life force out of me, that actually it is about time to be self-protective in a good way. Let's put on that Boudica breastplate that says, I love you, I care for you, I am soft-hearted, but I no longer breastfeed you. That's not what it's about at all. I am surrendering to God because I know that He can be trusted. So surrender doesn't mean I become a doormat. Surrender doesn't mean that I become kind of so involved in everybody else's life that I have no time for myself. Surrender doesn't mean any of those sorts of things. Also, the idea that if you're going to be part of a crack surrender squad, you also need to recruit people to the squad. It's a squad. It's not just a lone journey. I'm not a crack surrender hermit. Yeah, so there is an activism in it, in that I want to woo people and encourage people to also join this squad that is ultimately life-giving, freeing, empowering, wonderful, because we are being drawn into the love of God.
So what is the motto of the Crack Surrender Squad? If people are thinking, I'd quite like to join this.
Gosh, that is a really good question. I think, here I am enough.
And does it have a shield, kind of like this Boudica breastplate? Does it have kind of emblems on it?
I think it might be different for different people. And I think each of us know what we're surrendering. I mean, I know full well when I came to Christ what I was surrendering, what the stuff was that when I was baptized that I was laying down, and what I was dying to and what I was being born again in. So I think, probably for different people, it may well be different things. And there may be different things for different seasons as well, because I think the surrendering is not a one-time thing. In the same way that our walk, our journey with God is not a one-time thing. It's a constant choice. I have been saved, I am being saved, I will be saved. It's that journey of many choices, of daily choices, of moment by moment choices, of the reconnection with God every time we are, here I am. And I think maybe it is just that word surrender.
Mm. Yeah, one of the things that excites me about this conversation is that quite often when there are conversations about sort of being versus doing and not being so kind of caught up with the things that other people are expecting of us, you can have this image of, well, needing to go and sit in your rose garden with a candle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for so many people, If you're naturally active and busy, and that's what gives you life, and part of what you're bringing to the world is a kind of an energy and a creativity and an ability to spin several plates at once, then that also is part of who you are. And so this kind of internal shift is really subtle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Because if we genuinely believe that we have been created by a loving God who has made us the way that we are, then why are we thinking that the way that we are, the unique way that we are, the unique way that we interact and the things that we love and whatever, that must also be part of what he's created?
Yes.
For some people, that may well be that their joy and their happy place is sitting in a rose garden with a candle or whatever. But for other people, it may well be being on their bike or being in a crowd or cheering on their football team or whatever it is. Again, it's surrendering to being who we are and knowing that we are enough. That outside of sin, obviously, doing stuff that is really, not helpful. Let's just embrace who we are as individuals and the unique way that we've been put together, our unique personalities, and know that he's not disappointed with us because he doesn't have any illusions. And I say he a lot because that's obviously the paradigm in which I have been kind of shaped. But God is not disappointed with us because he doesn't have illusions.
But does have so much love and delight and joy in us.
Exactly. Being transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you're not hearing the voices of other people's expectations, not hearing the voices of the comparison thing that so often is a curse to us, but surrendering to the one that loves us for who we are because we're enough.
Yeah. I wonder if there's anything else that you feel it would be good to add.
So surrendering can sometimes bring up stuff from the past. And if that starts to happen, if that starts to bubble up, then it's really, really good to do that hand holding somebody who can help shape that journey.
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation because it occurs to me as you're speaking that actually other people's expectations and what we imagine God's expectations are of us can be a bit of a defense mechanism against actually working out what it is that we want. Because once you're working out what you want and who you are, that requires a little bit of going inside, and that doesn't always feel like a safe place to go.
And I think I'm going to be real as well about the fact that a lot of people's interactions within church, certainly over the last few decades, may have been, and this is not in all church contexts at all, but may have been one of experiencing quite heavy shepherding, quite heavy control, expectations that have led people to feel trapped into making choices that they perhaps wouldn't have chosen, and I think very good people sometimes find themselves being channeled in ways that when they look at it years later they think, gosh, was that really helpful to me, and has that actually caused me more pain and difficulty? And I think we need to own that as not necessarily come from a bad or malevolent place, but that sometimes has been the way that things have been explained or expressed, certainly from the front, if you like, and that people have taken on that thing of needing to be a certain thing. And we're used to talking about this in terms of, women's rights, whatever expectations on us as women, misogyny within workplaces, misogyny within churches, within those sorts of things. But I think that the sort of control or the kind of heavy shepherding that has happened within some Christian contexts has led people to feeling trapped and is in some circumstances. And so the idea of surrender may actually feel quite frightening, worrying, concerning for some people.
I'm aware that heavy shepherding is a term that not everybody will have come across.
No, exactly. And what I mean by that is, a controlling person, a pastoral control that says, you must do this, you must do that. You are not a good Christian if you are not doing this. You are not a good Christian if you are not doing this. If you want to be part of this church, if you want to be part of this group, then you need to be doing this. That's what I mean. The idea of a good shepherd is one that obviously tends the flock and would go after the lost sheep and would be looking after, protecting, encouraging, feeding, all of that. But the idea of a heavy shepherd is one who does not let the flock graze beautifully across the pasture, but that rather keeps them cooped in a pen.
And gives them an awful lot of jobs to do quite often.
Exactly. And exactly. And is not necessarily as kind, understanding when life circumstances happen, which means that the person cannot spin all the plates, cannot any longer be involved in all of the different things, and et cetera, et cetera.
And is selling the idea that actually surrender is about surrender to God, and I'm God's representative. However, whether I say this directly or imply it heavily, and so surrender is about giving up of yourself in order to follow somebody else's expectations, but that doing that is a holy and a Christian thing to do.
Yeah, and spinning that in such a way that it sort of gaslights the person into believing that they must do this to the detriment of themselves. And going back to what I was saying about martyring yourself for the cause and all of that kind of thing, there is a sense in which we sing the songs and we say, it's all for you, Lord. But that also doesn't mean that the squeeze should be put on by other people.
Yeah. The trouble with that, when it is, or when we kind of get this impression that it is that we imagine that the squeeze is being put on by God.
Yeah.
And that our Christian duty, our duty to Jesus, is to comply with that and to surrender to it. And what happens then is we become very outward focused, because you sort of have to ignore what's going on within in order to comply. And so you lose touch with what you described as factory settings and where you're coming from and who you are and who you were created to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that also is part of my thinking as well, is that how we reframe those things, how we enable ourselves to be kinder to one another.
Yeah. Yes, you said that you found yourself able to be kinder to people.
Yeah, I think so. If I have a certain set of expectations for myself, I need to own they are my own expectations, and they are not expectations that I should or could put on other people. I think it's enabled me to be kinder, to allow people to have the dignity of their own choices.
Yeah. Because we know ourselves that actually we're talking about this being quite an internal journey, and the subtleties are internal, and it's hard enough to work out what's going on within us without expecting that we ought to know what's going on in Mabel next door. And
exactly. And Mabel next door, I'm not going to know the fullness of Mabel next door, even if we have a million cups of coffee together. I'm still not going to know the fullness of Mabel, because only she'll know that. We try to be open to one another sometimes. Not always, but we try to be. But even in doing that, we're never really going to be fully open. And even with our nearest and dearest, we're never going to be fully open, because only really God knows the fullness of who we are.
And actually, Mabel next door doesn't know entirely know the fullness of who Mabel next door is, just as Andrea Clarke doesn't know the entirety of Andrea.
Exactly. And I'm blind to so many things of myself, and it's probably just as well.
Quite often I kind of think, oh gosh, this is a thing about me that I'd lost sight of, or that I'd not particularly noticed. Or I'm growing into this thing, and actually I quite like it, or I'm enjoying that, or I wouldn't have guessed. That there is this Jewish thing about every person being a universe in themselves.
Yeah.
And we really are. Your inner landscape is incredible.
Indeed. You're absolutely right. The trouble is, though, that when you start to say things like that, I start to think about the microbiome. So,
well, that's quite mad too. Are you drinking kefir, Andrea? We live in an incredible, complex world, and we are incredible, complex, beautifully made individuals. So, yes. Thank you so, so much.
Lovely to chat to you. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Loved Called Gifted podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email lovedcalledgifted@gmail.com. You can find a transcript of this podcast at lovedcalledgifted.com. And that's also the place to go if you're interested in the Loved Called Gifted course, or if you'd like to find out about spiritual direction or coaching. Thank you for listening.